Let's talk to Doug in South Carolina. Doug, walk us through it. What did you want to say today?
Well, just thank you for having me on here. I watched a couple of videos of Forrest, and there was one where he was having some critique of a creationist, and I thought the critique was honest, and so I thought, well, maybe I could have a conversation with you. But I wanted to get to the idea that you believe heavily in science. I think science is important, and therefore I thought that the topic of the Shroud of Turin was interesting because it's a very unique piece of tapestry, and there are some inexplicable aspects of the Shroud of Turin, how it was created, how it was a negative, that no one would, there'd be no purpose of having a negative that would produce a 3D image, and therefore that raises the question, what caused that? And I believe that that is a solid basis for speculation that there was a supernatural force that created that image.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting conversation to consider. I am not super up on my, sort of occultish Catholic lore, but I might suggest that rather than the Shroud of Turin being evidence for the supernatural, it's probably more accurate to say that the lore and the rumor and the mystery of the Shroud of Turin is more compelling than the actual evidence itself. I again, am not going to pretend to be super well-versed in all this. Johnny, I don't know if you are more familiar than I am, but what I have recognized is that there are these sort of stories and rumors about these tests that have been done, sure, but there is not like a research laboratory at some college or university that is in possession of and doing experiments. Fair to say?
Yeah, no, I'm not entirely sure about that. I'm looking at NBCnews.com. This is from 2018. There's a whole bunch of stuff on the internet. But it says new research is in line with numerous previous studies that have concluded that the Shroud is not authentic. Earlier carbon dating work has determined that it dates from 1260 to 1390. Jesus is generally to believe to have died in the year 33. A blue ribbon panel called the Turin Commission has concluded in 1979 that stains on the garment are likely pigments, not blood, while textiles experts and art historians have suggested that the materials and images are not from the right era. As early as 1390, about 35 years after the Shroud first emerged in France, I'm not going to say that word because I'm a stupid American, the Catholic bishop in Troyes wrote to Pope Clement VII that the Shroud was a clever sleight of hand by someone falsely declaring this was the actual Shroud in which Jesus was enfolded in the tomb to attract the multitude so that the money might cunningly be wrung from them. And in the most recent study, forensic scientists used blood pattern analysis to investigate the arm and body position necessary to yield the pattern seen on the Shroud. Using a living volunteer and a mannequin to model several positions, researchers determined that the patterns were consistent with multiple poses, which contradicts with the theory that Jesus was buried in the cloth lying down. And there's a lot more where that came from.
Yeah, I'll point out that was over the course of 2.5 minutes of Googling while live on air.
Yeah.
You've come to those conclusions.
So how would
that feels significant.
Yeah. How would we determine whether the Shroud of Turin is authentic? Well, if we wanted to use science, we would have to employ scientific methods. This suggests there's individuals here. Matteo Borini, a forensic scientist at Liverpool John Moores University in England who worked on the project, said the effort showed how forensic research can be used in ancient investigations. It sounds like that's the place you should maybe start in your investigation. But maybe you have already been there. What have you got?
I wasn't expecting to call, but I do recall that there was some investigation into the Shroud of Turin, and the problem scientifically is that in order to test, you have to destroy a small piece of the cloth, which is the problem because the more you test, the more you destroy the very thing that you want to preserve. So I do know that there was a report that there was some repair done in the I guess, 13th, 15th, 16th century to it. And if you test that, then you get a much later date. So there have been some subsequent tests, that have been done, and so here's something that's interesting that I can't verify, that I would say would be in the realm of lore that you're familiar with. I've seen rumors that if you test the blood, that it would be female blood representative of the fact that it was a virgin blood, so therefore that would be more along the lines of something that I would say I'm skeptical about.
Yeah, I don't know how they're getting DNA off of a 2,000-year-old cloth. I'm not an expert, but that feels very fishy. It is worth asking the question, if the Shroud of Turin is truly the robe that Jesus Christ, who was an actual person / God, was actually buried in, and for whatever reason it creates these bizarre supernatural images under an X-ray, even if we allow for all of that, so what? Like, how does that get us towards God exists? If there is a all-powerful, all-loving being that has guided the direction of our universe, that has created our entire universe, who is terrified of the thought that his children will suffer eternally in hell if they don't turn and accept him, and who desperately wants to welcome his children back into his house as the prodigal sons, then why is his message, here is a piece of cloth that maybe, possibly, but most scientists disagree, could potentially have bizarre super magical powers? Why does God speak to us through old cloth?
I don't think anyone said the cloth itself has bizarre supernatural powers. Let me pose this in a different. You're familiar with Sir Conan Doyle?
Yeah, we're speaking about the writer of the Sherlock Holmes stories.
Correct. So he made a statement.
Oh gosh, here it comes.
And again, I'm paraphrasing. If you have an event and you subtract all the other logical, reasonable possibilities, and you have nothing else to explain that event, you must believe that.
No.
And again, I know
that's not how it works.
But
are you kidding me? That's Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He wrote fun stories about Sherlock Holmes, but that's not how we do logic
Or forensics.
And imagine if that was the standard that took place in courtrooms in this and other countries. Think about it. And we've ruled out that the butler did it. We've ruled out that the maid did it. We've ruled out that Lady Chilsington,
Colonel Mustard, Miss Scarlet, they've all been ruled out.
But we haven't ruled out that, Mrs. Peacock
with the candlestick.
Therefore, she must have committed the murder, and therefore we'll put her to death. That's not how things work. Okay? The best you can say is we don't know. But we're not. Look, the way we'll find out whether or not the Shroud of Turin is from the time of Jesus, which is around the year 0, right? Is if we do scientific analysis on it and we conclude through using the scientific method and processes and testing methodologies that have resulted in positive tests to prove that it is. At this point, all of the science that I'm seeing on the internet in the 15 minutes that I've been, the 5 minutes and 44 seconds that I've been doing research, says that everyone agrees it's a fraud using scientific methods. We don't need to use...
Why is that hard to believe?
Yeah, why do we have to go to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle? Why don't we just go to the people who are actually doing the science on it? And we're talking about lore, Doug, and I don't want to be mean to you, but we're talking about lore, and I remember reading something. Forget that. That's not how we do investigations. I remember
It's not how we decide our moral philosophy or our cosmology for the creation of the entire universe.
Go read the actual first source material.
I'm certainly not suggesting certain Sir Conan Doyle is the end all and be all of an investigation.
He's not even the begin all.
I am. Well, you have someone has to. In other words, you would have a different starting point, and I would. Number one, number two. I think we have a factual disagreement. I think that there's more scientific study that you haven't been able to uncover.
Then you can share those sources with us. Don't tell me you read something once. I'm not yelling at you, Doug. It sounds like I am. You can share those sources with us from scientific journals, not from the National Association of the Shrouded Turin is totally legit .biz. Send us those source materials to read, and I'm interested to see if it exists. Okay, lore ain't gonna do it. Lore is like right next to freaking legend.
I can tell you again. I didn't know I was going to call you. I will tell you, there's a Jewish photographer who is amazed by, and the reason. I mean, he is resistant to Jesus being the resurrected Lord, which in a sense gives him credibility because he's not looking for the conclusion.
Sure.
And I apologize. I don't know the individual name.
Schwartz.
And so
is his name. His name is I'm trying to find his first name. I'm finding this in the Windsor Star. Look, all this stuff can be found. So, just spend an hour if you want to. Put together a little white paper if you want to. And we can engage in a conversation, but you're going to have to bring specific evidence. Yeah, here he is. There is no paint on this cloth, says a photographer. I'm not
that's not going to change my moral philosophy.
Barry Schwartz is the name of the guy. So, again, but Christy made a good point. Like, okay.
So part of the problem is that, I was surprised because you wanted a topic.
Yeah.
And again, I didn't know that you were going to ask me to bring up a topic. So that was what I thought would be interesting for your audience.
No, it's great.
And obviously,
it's great.
Bring your A game. Read up on it. Give us a call again. Let us know what some of the evidence, what some of the things you're looking at are. I am just far from convinced based on the conversation we've had so far.
But you know what? I want to say this to all the people who thought about calling. Doug called. Doug had something. I'm talking to you too, Doug. You had something. You wanted to call in and have a conversation. Just because I don't agree with you, just because we're not following along with you, just because we're pushing back doesn't mean we don't think you're awesome for doing so. All right? And honestly, it's a better conversation than the last call that we had. Yeah. Because we're getting closer to specifics, right? On the last call, we're talking about the universe, both the invisible and the uninvisible. And here we're talking about something concrete, something that we can talk specifics about. And we can actually do research about it because we've identified a subject matter rather than everything. So, yeah, you were a Minuteman. You jumped to action. You gave us a call. You weren't expecting a call. So would you call back maybe with a little bit more information, knowing that you're going to be welcome back on the show? In fact, we're going to be salivating. In a good way.
All right. I appreciate you guys, and glad we could have a good back and forth.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much.